Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Possibly good afternoon. Happy Earth Day. And thank you for joining us today for this conversation, which is extremely important, particularly in 2026, I think. And this is going to be very enlightening. The session is designed to feel more like a conversation than a traditional webinar. So we promise no death by PowerPoint, no formal presentations. No, you're not going to hit you with a bunch of data. We are going to have a very candid conversation about how careers actually evolve over time. During the conversation, please feel free to ask questions in the chat, which is at the bottom of the presentation window. And we will do our best to weave it into the conversation, and the panelists can answer as we go along. Just briefly, my name is Lisa Keefe. I'm here to moderate this conversation, and I'm going to introduce the panelists in a second, but we're focusing today on the why behind the work. Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you sell, they buy why you sell it or why you make it. And so we're going to talk about what drives people, how their decisions got made over time, and then what shapes a career over a long term. So you're going to hear experiences from across the industry, and we encourage you to participate by dropping questions in the chat throughout. A brief introduction from each of our panelists, and I'm going to let them do the honors. So, Nikki, you are first on my screen. So, why don't you get us kicked off?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nikki St. Dennis. I am Sales and Marketing Manager for Nile Dehydrators. I started my career in graphic design and marketing many, many years ago. Ended up in doing some construction work as well as, paperwork for construction, marketing, and graphics with freelance. And then I ended up working for a company doing equipment sales or equipment graphics for sawmill industry. And then to Nile Systems. We manufacture food dehydration units for commercial and industrial use, both batch and industrial. And that's where I am today. And I've been with Nile now for about 2.5 years.
That's great. I love the career path that starts in, sort of marketing support services and then moves into such a key position in sales. And we want to hear more about that as we go on. Marie, let's hear about you.
Wonderful. Hi, my name's Marie Stoleski. I'm with Haskell. Haskell's a design build firm based in Jacksonville, Florida. I worked for a company called Cyberling, which was bought out by Haskell in 2012. Started off as a process engineer designing pharmaceutical and food and beverage businesses. Moved into more of a management role, and once Haskell bought us, have transitioned and now am a project director on the construction side of the business. So kind of turned around, and I've been with Cyberling / Haskell for 19 years.
They must be treating you well. 19 years is a long time, and we want to hear more about that. Erin, let's hear from you.
So my name is Erin Littleton. I am a senior process engineer with Gray AES, which is also a design build firm. I work more in process integration. I actually started my career not in food and beverage. I worked more in ceramics and plastisols. That was actually the first about 10 years of my experience. And I started as a shift supervisor and then transitioned more into an engineering role.
Okay, great. So we have a foundation of experience, and I want to talk a little bit more about the evolution of each path. I mean, nobody's careers follow the exact same line. And so I'd like to hear about the path that you took, whether there were moments where things maybe didn't go as planned and how you responded to that. Just some highlights of how you got to where you are today. Marie, let's start with you this time.
Wonderful. So as I mentioned, in 2012, the small design firm that I worked for, Cyberling, was bought by Haskell. And at that point, I kind of it opened my eyes to different possibilities of what I could do with my career, whether I wanted to solely focus on engineering or move in more the construction side of the business. As I enjoyed kind of being in charge and leading teams and working directly with clients, I chose to go down the path of construction. And by sheer luck that Haskell bought us out, it gave me the opportunity to kind of grow into the position that I have today.
When you were in school and you were training, you were envisioning what you were going to be doing in your career. Did you think about doing what you're doing now?
Absolutely not. So I went to Purdue University. I'm a chemical engineer by trade, and I interned. I actually thought I wanted to be a doctor. And so I was actually on the medical school track up until my junior year when I did an internship at the Cleveland Clinic. I was in the Brain Tumor Institute. I was like doing like pipetting, and I was looking at this. I'm like, biomedical engineers don't do what I think they're going to do, and I can't stomach actually being a doctor. So that kind of shifted, and I started looking for more consulting jobs, and got with Cyberling out of in their pharmaceutical side actually, and started on the pharma side, and then decided that was too methodical for me, and needed the more fast pace of the food industry, and that's kind of how I got here. But there's no way that my 20-year-old self would have said, "Hey, you're going to be in charge of construction projects when you grow up."
But it's funny how it just sort of finds you if you remain open to it. Erin, let's hear about your path. I mean, did you envision doing what you're doing now when you were training for it?
So similar to Marie, I'm also a chemical engineer. I went to Virginia Tech, and I did not envision starting off as a shift supervisor. I went to school, got this great engineering degree, and I felt like I'm not even using it. Like I'm just a manager. And so at the time, I was a little frustrated because it wasn't where I wanted to be then. And so my career didn't quite start how I envisioned it. And then depending on where I was at in my career, kind of changed my direction and priorities. So after being a shift supervisor for about 3 years, I actually relocated. At the time I was in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I relocated to where I'm at right now in Kentucky, just for another opportunity to be an engineer. And I did that job for almost 10 years. And I really enjoyed it, but it was very intense. I was traveling to Asia, maybe like 60 to 75% of my time. And so when I started my family, the job that I once loved, that was my dream job that I did for 10 years, was no longer my dream. My priorities had shifted. I really wanted to spend more time with my family. And so now that's kind of how I ended up with Gray, where in my world right now, it's the best of everything. I still get to travel, but it's a lot less, maybe like 25% of the time. It just depends on the project I'm on, but I have a lot more say in my schedule. And so that works for me now. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the next couple of years, my career shifts again, depending on where I'm at.
Well, what I'm hearing also from both of you, and Nikki, I'm going to ask you because I know a little about your story already. I'm going to get to you in a second. What I'm hearing is just being open to new ideas, not, you start out thinking you're heading in one direction and then you wind up in another for whatever circumstance. And so I just want to hear a little bit about the importance of being open to unexpected twists and turns in life, in job, that sort of thing. Nikki, you've had a couple of zigs and zags.
Yes. So I started in graphic design. I went to school for that in Toronto. And when I was in school, I thought for sure, oh, I'm going to work for a freelance or for a company, a big marketing firm or something like that. You've got these grandiose ideas. Met my then husband, had a family real young. I was 23 when my daughter was born. During that time, I was working for a lumber yard doing takeoffs and orders for contractors and builders. I had decided I was going to do the stay-at-home mom thing. I went into the job after my maternity leave, and he had told me, "Hey, we're going to give you an office, and you're going to take care of all the builders and do the contracts and everything like this." I was 24, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to do this now for the rest of my life." I went home. I said to my husband, "We need to find a daycare provider because this is what's going to happen." And he had said, well, we can get an in-house nanny. And that was the end of that. I was like, no, forget that. Nobody else is going to raise my kids. So I was a young mom. I did what I had to do during that time. I ended up doing a lot of freelance graphic work, marketing. I then started doing a lot of his book work and stuff for his construction company. And that was mainly what I did for most of my life. And then I got a job doing market design and graphics for a sawmill industry. They do equipment manufacturing for the sawmill industry, and I was in that for a couple of years. I met the Nile team during that with their dry kiln side, and that's how I ended up in the food side. They hired me on to bring up their business on the food side of things, and so I got hired on for sales and marketing. When he sat me down first, my then boss sat me down and said, "I want you to come on board as sales." I said, "I can't sell crap. I've never really sold anything my whole entire life. I've been told like you can't sell anything and yada yada yada." In the end, I'm here now doing sales. I love it. I never thought I'd be into sales. So usually behind the camera, not in front of the camera, and I'm doing a lot of stuff in front of the camera these days. So.
It's interesting. I was listening to you and I was thinking, as you explained sort of the very early part of your career, and you said, I did what I had to do raising my family. It occurred to me, whereas the stay-at-home mother, uh, usually, was sort of the default, it feels now like that's a tricky decision to make, that there's, that it may not be the most attractive for one's career.
It's
So,
Yeah,
so I
no,
just wanted to
it's
hear more about that.
actually, yeah, so it's a hard decision to make because when you need a good support system, whether you're actually following your career or whether you're a stay-at-home mom, because there's two different aspects to that. One, when you're a stay-at-home mom, you're not bringing money into the house. So you've got all these other responsibilities. You've got this drive to want to help and do more, and you feel a little bit stuck. But I would never take that away. Like myself, like that's what I wanted. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to take care of the house and everything else along with it. Um, I'm at a point in my life where the kids are older. They're in their early 20s, and now I'm building my career and now I'm moving forward. So you think you're coming from behind, but you're not. I'm actually where I need to be right now. So even though my career didn't take off until the 40s, I would never take that back.
Well, that is a great thought, because most people, I know, the message that you get in college is, start out fast and strong, and, first mover advantage and all that kind of stuff. So I love this perspective that you can circle back later, and maybe you're even in an even better position to build that career.
I
And
think personal growth changes throughout your life too. So I think that there's different stages of life and you do what you can at each stage and where you're at to make things work. So
oh, definitely. And Erin, I know that in your case that you had maternity leave and you had all the benefits and you got back to work, and you thought, this is not it. And so I'm interested in how that, these changes in your personal life changed the way that you thought about your professional life.
Yeah, so that definitely shifted for me. I uh, had my son in my late 20s, so not quite as early as Nikki. So I was a little bit more established in my career, but it definitely changed. So, what once started off as, I think I mentioned this earlier, my dream job, I was traveling to Asia, for 2 months at a time, that was with a 2-month-old, like that wasn't what I wanted anymore. I mean, every time away from him just became harder and harder. And I ended up getting laid off from that job because I was considered more of like an underperformer uh, because work was no longer my number one priority. And it was, really hard for me to take that because it made me feel like I was doing something wrong. And that frustrated me because I was like, choosing to have a family shouldn't be made to feel wrong, but it just felt wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So once I was laid off, I was in a very unique position where I didn't have to go back to work. So I, like Nikki, was like, well, maybe I want to be a stay-at-home mom. And I lasted maybe 6 months, and I was like, no, this is not for me. I need something else. And so I couldn't do it without a support system as well. My husband ended up staying at home and becoming kind of a stay-at-home dad and watching my son so that I could go back and travel. And I travel less, which is what I want. But I couldn't do what I'm doing now without the support of, that I receive because, I'm traveling right now. My project is having me travel almost every other week. And I couldn't, my son's only 10 right now. So he needs somebody to get him from point A to point B. So I couldn't do what I'm doing right now without that support. And so I'm very appreciative that that is what my husband wanted to do. And he is very supportive of that. So that allows me to do what I want.
And I'm really glad that in the 2020s, at least, that men are not quite as frowned upon quite as much by quite as many people for opting for that path. My husband was also a stay-at-home dad, so and it made all the difference. Marie, tell me about, in your experience, how you how changes in your personal life ended up tipping your professional life in one direction or another.
Sure. So like Aaron, I had kids more in my early 30s. And so my kids are 11 and 9 right now. And when I was traveling a ton up until then. And then I really stopped traveling and more did a lot of consulting work for the same company, just didn't, I never left. And realized that if I wanted my career to grow in the trajectory that I was seeing it, one of us had to step back, and my husband actually did step back in his job. We both actually work remotely, and we moved closer to my family so that not only would he have the support around him, but then I was free to continue kind of moving up in my career.
So the theme I hear all along here is particularly supportive spouses, supportive partners in life, and so I'm interested in uh, were those easy decisions to make? Were those sort of difficult conversations? When you were trying to figure out where this path was going to go next. Marie, I have you up on
And
my
certainly in my
screen.
case, yeah, sure. Certainly in my case, it was not an easy decision, but it was actually made prior to us getting married. So my husband and I both started working at Cyberling. He worked there before I did. So that's where we met. And before we even got engaged, he left because he said he didn't want to work with his wife, which totally I get. But from that standpoint, knowing that he was taking a back seat to where my career was going. So we kind of made that call very early on in our relationship. And it still sometimes is like, well, where would we be if we would have made a different choice? And I'm like, I don't know. That's a great question, but we're here now. So this is what we're going to continue down. Because he literally works a 7:30 to 4 job, which makes him very flexible to pick up kids and do that. And he's always at home. And so it just is really easy to like be there all the time, where I travel all the time. I'm in the car right now. So from that standpoint, it's really important that, you have those conversations and continue to readdress them. But it has to be the conversation, and it isn't always the reason that you think at the beginning, because we weren't even sure we were going to have kids back then.
Well, and kids also sort of grow up with what they know. But has anybody on the panel gotten any sort of uh, pushback from offspring or partners, and how
Oh,
maybe did you work that out uh, in your career?
okay. So can I go?
Oh,
I got
sure.
lots in this department, and Erin, I think, knows a little bit here. But so my career path has really taken full force after I decided to stand up for myself. So, in the last 5 years, I've decided to have a voice for myself in where I wanted to go and how I wanted to get there. I took that one job prior to this one, and my personal development has grown at such a pace that it made my spouse feel very uncomfortable. So I think no matter what, it would have ended up this way anyways. It's just so yeah. Recently we've separated and it's been a tough 4 years. So when I say that you need a cheerleader or an advocate to help you progress into who you are and the direction that you're going, you absolutely do need it. So the teams that I have been up with and working with, and especially at Nile, have been very supportive in training me and teaching me and leading me and becoming the person really that I am today in my job. And they've been a huge support system for me. It really hurts when you've got somebody beside you that is trying to take you down because they don't like that growth that is happening with you, and they're starting to feel uncomfortable with you going to trade shows and you taking off and you're not at home and you're not, the
Hmm.
barefoot pregnant woman that you have been the whole, marriage. So yeah, your cheerleaders beside you and the people that you put around you make a huge difference on how you are, how you interact with people, and your personal growth, both in personal life and in career as well. And if you've got a strong team behind you, I mean, the sky's the limit, right?
Absolutely. So in this, uh, as you were pivoting to this new approach to balancing your personal and your professional, how did you find the mentors and those people who have helped you nurture and try new things and move in new directions? Were they just there, or was this someone that you sought out
Yes.
and said,
Uh, no, they're kind of right there in front of you. And you recognize it when you're looking for answers, you almost find them a lot easier. So there are a few people that I can say are definitely my mentors that I rely on heavily. And they all serve different purposes. So I started, I've got somebody that I see. I have friends that I count on. I have colleagues that I count on, and everybody has sort of a unique perspective to my development. I'll go to my friend for personal advice. I'll go to my colleagues at work and talk to them about things that I'm having trouble with at work or whatever. And it could even be financial. If I
Mhm.
have a colleague at work and, or a close friend that is very good at finances, I'll relay information back to them and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you give me a hand?" Don't be afraid to ask, for help. And those mentors, they're generally in front of you. Everybody's got a unique talent and they've got information that they'd love to share. You just have to seek it out.
Well, that's really great advice. I think in past decades there was much more of a clear line between, this is work and these are your work colleagues and you deal with them in these situations, and then here are your friends in the neighborhood, et cetera. And it all is sort of of a continuum these days. Some of my work friends have been my best friends, et cetera. Aaron, how does this work to your situation? Do you have work friends and personal friends, and is it that fluid?
It's actually changed. So when I first started, I had a lot of work friends that I considered personal friends. It was like both worlds just combined. I used to go on vacation with these, girls. We'd go to Europe together, and then we would work together the very next week. And so it was really fun. And I still talk to them to this day, even though we haven't worked together for probably 5 or 6 years now. So I really value those relationships. I think right now, ever since the pandemic, everybody's a little bit more remote. And I've been struggling more with making those same connections at work, where I feel like it's more work colleagues and I'm friendly with people, but it's not as deep of a connection as like when I feel like I first started. And then for me, with the mentorship that Nikki was talking about, I think the best advice that I ever got was actually from the first female supervisor that I had. It was 10 years into my career, finally got a female supervisor. And she told me, because she saw me struggling, what was going on was I was comparing myself to my previous self. I don't know if anybody's on this call has ever done that before, but I was getting really frustrated because I was getting upset that I felt like I was moving backwards. I felt like, when I first started my career, I had so much ambition. I was working 70 hours a week, but it didn't seem like 70 because I just genuinely loved what I did. Like it just, I was on fire. Like I was just like working, working, working. And then, after my son was born, it was such a big life-changing event. I was having trouble keeping up because it felt like I was trying to work two full-time jobs in the amount of time that you could only do one. And I felt like I had no balance. I couldn't figure it out. I was getting mad at myself for not delivering at work. I was getting mad at myself for not being home all the time. And I couldn't figure it out. And she told me, she's like, she goes, 100% isn't the same every day. Sometimes 100% you can deliver on, one day is different than the 100% that you can deliver on another day. And that's okay. You're just giving what you can on that day. And that's all you can do. You just have to be okay with it. Like you can't get mad that your 100% today is less than your 100% 5 years ago. And so that kind of changed how I looked at things. And I'm just kinder to myself now with that. And it just really struck a chord with me. And so that's kind of how I've been living my career now is I just give what I can for that day, knowing that's what's available. Like that's what's in the cup because it's just a shift. Sometimes my priorities, demand more time for my personal, and sometimes my career is my priority for that day. And that's okay that it's fluid.
That's a really interesting. I love that advice. That's an interesting perspective, and I wonder if that resonates with our other panelists here, or do you have a different approach?
Yeah, certainly resonates. Certainly resonates with me. I think I've never actually gotten that advice, but I think that's how I generally live. Just being able to be there. Like I coach my daughter's soccer team, so instead of driving yesterday, I got up early to drive this morning so that I could be there for her team when in reality, like I probably should already be where my destination is. So just needing to understand and, give myself grace that, okay, I don't really need to be there at any certain time, and kind of taking that priority away from general like role model and advice that I've received. I used to take on a lot, and learning to delegate was kind of a huge game changer for me. Not only trusting the people around me, but kind of letting go. So I think we all just want to do everything ourselves, to the best of our abilities until we realize that for whatever reason, we no longer have those same exact abilities and time to devote and give to 120,000% to work. And so because we have other things going on. And so I think just being able to trust those around you, and it kind of changes your whole ability to have that balance. And to Erin's point, similar, since it's not like 50% work, 50% home. Some days it's going to be 100% work. Sometimes it's going to be 100% home, and everywhere in between. And I think that's where people need to realize that it's okay to prioritize what needs to be prioritized. Just making sure that you're able to delegate to others, because no one's going to do the work if it's not getting done.
Yeah, absolutely. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think for me, the biggest thing that I've had to learn is to let go, not to do everything myself. I've had to learn how to break down my walls and trust people that, other people can do other jobs and tasks so that, it makes your day a little bit easier to rely on other people and yeah, to put that trust in other people.
And I think it's
And you,
okay. I'm sorry, Lisa.
no,
I was
go
gonna say,
ahead, Aaron.
I was gonna say, like, just to build on what Marie and Nikki said, is it's okay to assess too and realize this isn't where I want to be anymore. I mean, this has happened to me 3 times in my career already, so almost I'm like averaging every 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like, the first time it happened was before I even had a kid. I was younger in my career, and I mentioned this earlier, where I spent all of this time getting my chemical engineering degree, and I was a shift supervisor. I felt like I wasn't doing what I went to school for, and I could I have done it? Was I making good money? Sure, but it wasn't what I wanted, and so I assessed and, I had some mentors at the time, and I just realized if I wanted it to change, like I had to move and relocate. And I was okay with that. And so that's how I got to, be where I'm living at now in Kentucky. And then after my son was born, I assessed, I don't think this job is working for me anymore. And I almost went the opposite direction. I went to, like, 60, 75% travel to zero travel. Um,
Mm.
I went from like really challenging work to just making a paycheck. And it, because I saw all these people that was like, they're just okay with it. They're just like, I'm prioritizing my life. I'm just here to get money for a job, and that's okay. But I realized that was not for me. And, I was at that job for 2 years before I left and landed where I'm at now, which I think for me is the perfect combination of challenging career and a work-life balance that I can manage. But like the pendulum has swung, and think what I wanted to emphasize to everybody is it's okay to make mistakes, to try new things, and to see, like, is this what I want? Is this not what I want? Because I think that helps build where you want to be. I mean, because you just don't know, and it's okay to realize this is not where I'm at. This is not where I need to be.
You sort of have to give yourself permission to reassess and maybe redirect. A lot of folks, I think, get started on a career path and then they feel like, oh my God, if I step off of this, then what have the last 6 years been, et cetera. And that's just not really the case.
Hard to change that momentum, especially if you've been in a certain like job or certain career, for 10 years. I started off in ceramics and now I'm in food and beverage. And that was a very scary leap because I was used to working in a manufacturing plant. I wasn't used to being in construction where it's more of like a consulting and contracting into different jobs. Like that was a huge leap. And it was so scary. I mean, I went from being like a subject matter expert to like people would come to me and be like, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, to now, like, I've been in this for 4 years, and
Mhm.
every day I'm still like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing.
And sometimes getting up and going to work and thinking I don't know what I'm doing is actually sort of exciting because you get to learn something new.
it it is.
Now, one of the things that I think everybody has mentioned is what I think of as a career pivotal moment for just about anybody, which is that move from being the doer to the overseer, to management, to delegation, et cetera. And it really, it's kind of funny how people get promoted from a really highly productive role to a management role, because the skill set that's needed to be a good manager is very different from that for being a really good producer, at least in my experience. And so I kind of want to hear from each of you about how you made that shift, and maybe, what missteps you might have made along the way, and then also what worked. And I will let anybody start who wants to start.
Sure, I
Although I
can
will
go.
call on somebody. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'll go ahead. So I realized early on that I didn't want to be a doer.
Oh,
Once
good.
I was able So I started delegating probably 3 or 4 years in. And once I kind of got on that train, I was like, I really like it up here. And so I just continued to want, more responsibilities. And from a management standpoint, I don't have to manage people. I never managed an individual from a like supervisor role. I manage teams and project teams, and I'm like the project leader. And so it's a little bit of a different approach, where I don't have to manage their personal lives day to day. I manage what's going on in the project, which allows me to use, other skills that I've developed along the way, from strategy to just client relationships, and then understanding kind of the needs and roles of everyone around me, to put people in the right position to succeed. So that's kind of how it happened for me.
Interesting. Anybody else?
I
Aaron,
just
you
think,
made that. Go
just
ahead.
just recognizing your personal strengths and your weaknesses and working on them. Reading different personal development books and leadership books and things like that, and actually really understanding where you fit in your job. I think that helps a lot.
Did the measure of success change? I mean, and then how do you know if you're succeeding? You're in management. You're no longer doing. You don't have your name on these things, and it's like, see what I did. So, what about measurement of success after you've made that shift?
So for me, because I
Yeah,
actually started off in management and now I'm more more of a doer. I,
interesting.
I'm okay doing either. I think I prefer to be the doer. I like to work behind the scenes and just get stuff done. That's where my stress likes to be. It's a little bit more stressful trying to manage the people side of it for me. Um, but I, instead of managing projects, in the past have managed more like people. And for me, my success criteria being more behind the scenes is if the people that I mentored and that, reported to me, if they succeed, that's my success. Like, I just feel like there's nothing more encouraging than when I see somebody that like, asking me for advice and then, oh my gosh, they got a promotion or like they killed it on this project presentation. Like, I'm like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, like they like it's like watching like a kid, like your kids succeed almost. You're just like, oh my gosh, like they did such a great job. Like I love that. I love being that cheerleader. I love helping them get to where they want to go and reach their goals, and being a part of that. Like that to me is my measure of success.
That's cool. That's great. So in terms of the skills, what you've brought to the party, whether it's in a doer position or a management position, what do you think have proven to be the most important, say, one or two skills that have made the most of that have been most useful in your career? And I'm going to start with Marie on that, whether it's a personal skill or a professional
Sure.
skill.
So I found that authenticity.
Mm,
I make friends very quickly, and not in a like fake way. I get to know people very quickly, and they get to know me, and then you build that trust very quickly. And in my current role, that's important, especially with new clients. So from that standpoint, I think that's huge. And then just general kind of command and presence. So I didn't realize how much influence I had over my peers and others within the organization until it was kind of made known to me that people actually listen to what I say. And so, in the role that I'm currently taking on, I'm in charge of all of design and construction on a $500 million project. And so, having that assertiveness and command in a room where people are actually listening to what you're saying is
hmm
extremely important.
and kind of intoxicating, maybe in a little way.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
But I tend to stand behind my decisions, um, even if they're wrong, and own up to it. And that kind of speaks back to the authenticity. Like I'll make a decision and I'll own it if it's right, wrong, or we'll find
Yeah.
out later.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I've learned is important in my role.
Definitely. Nikki, what are one or two skills do you think have brought you along the furthest?
Well, I agree with Marie on that. So authenticity, being your true self, listening, listening to your colleagues, listening to your customer, understanding where they're coming from, and then relating to them and building relationships. So it definitely people skills for sure.
Great. Erin, what has brought you the furthest?
So I'm going to agree with Marie and Nikki. I like the accountability and the authenticity aspect that they brought up. To me, it's just being that like open and honest communication. If you don't know something, it's okay to say you don't know it. And that's how you learn. I can't tell you how many conversations I've been in where, you can tell somebody is BSing you and it just takes down a crazy path. And I just feel like it always makes the project worse off. It's just like if you just don't know it, that's okay. We can work with that. We can teach it. Um, yeah, that's probably my biggest thing. It's just open and honest communication. If you know something, go with it, and work with the customer, figure it out. But if you don't, just really communicate that, especially maybe not to the customer if you don't feel comfortable doing that, but at least internally, so that your team knows what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I think what I'm hearing as a common thread here is that everybody is working for an organization, or at least for people within the organization, where you guys are comfortable and you can be authentic, and not everybody has that advantage. Some companies are viper pits. So perhaps, and I don't want to spill too many beans, but if there has been a situation where you did not feel that you could be quite as open as you would like to be, or if you knew somebody was BSing you. So how do you sort of cut through that?
And do you guys mind if I take this one first?
Sure.
um, so I can give a pretty good example. I was traveling a lot to Asia, and I was actually had a project that I was leading in South Korea. And just culturally, South Korea is very a top-down organization. So a junior engineer leading a project does not always succeed. Similar with
Mm.
a woman engineer leading a project, it's very male dominated over there. And so, going into that project, I was not 100% set up for success, being a junior engineer and a woman. And so what was happening is I would host these meetings, going over what we should be doing for the shift and the day, like the direction of the project. And they would have meetings behind my back after that meeting to basically try to undo everything that I was doing. And it was all very polite. They weren't saying it to my face. It was just like running around behind, trying to guide. So it was like, it's almost like gaslighting where you start to question, like, are they doing this? Or are they just like, is it translating into Korean, to make it go smoother? So you
Mm.
start questioning, like, am I reading too much into this? And so the only way that I figured out, and for better or worse, I don't know if this is the right answer, but the only way I figured out how to make things work over there was by not by basically hiding my personality. So instead of being more straightforward of like, we're going to do this, this, and this, I would basically just go up to the most Korean, like senior Korean male and just say, oh my gosh, like you're so smart. Can you explain this to me? Like, I don't understand how this works. And so they would explain their ideas, which were really my ideas. And I didn't have any ego. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, that's so good. But what if this? And I'd ask the question of like, I just don't know. So I'd try to go around it and ask a question like, can you explain it to me? I just don't get it. And they would basically explain my ideas back to me. And we'd eventually get to where I wanted to go. But it still kills me to this day. I know I had to do it and the project succeeded, but it went so far above like what I like was my personality. And I still to this day don't know if it was the right answer. I just knew that the project was successful.
Wow, what a tough position to be in. Anybody else on the panel? A situation where you ran into and you sort of had to diffuse it, because I think that's a really great example.
I mean, I would say from a diffusing standpoint, not necessarily that I was the expert and we're trying to convince others of kind of the right direction that needed to go. More in a situation where I was not the expert, and just the way to specifically explain to a client that, hey, I don't know, but let me go ask so and so who is the expert in that field that can kind of help you. So, as a chemical engineer, I don't know anything about structural engineering, literally nothing. That's not my role. That's not my job. It never has been, and nor never will be. But I do know experts within our organization that are that person. And so making sure that you're still exuding that it's okay to not know the answer. You just need to know where to get it, and to make sure, to Erin's point earlier, like it's okay to say that you don't know.
That is very important. Erin brought up something, and I wanted to explore it a little bit further, which is the pandemic. And I'm interested in what sort of an effect that dislocation in global society sort of had on your professional lives, if any at all. And if not, I'm interested kind of in why, or how is what you're doing now different from what you were doing in the before times. I'm sort of interested in how this might have switched directions for some people. It kind of pushed us all around for such a long time. Nikki, why don't we start
Well,
with you?
yeah, okay. So that's actually a good timeline of change in direction as to what I was doing. So being freelance in graphics and marketing, I was taking care of many different sign companies, marketing firms, doing stuff for them. But when COVID hit and everything shut down, my total income shut down completely. So in a matter of overnight, all of a sudden now I'm not making anything because I was also freelance. I had no EI, I had nothing coming in.
Yeah.
Um, so we managed. And then when things opened up, because it was COVID and I was graphic design at that time, yeah, then all of a sudden businesses needed all their stay 6 feet away stickers, and I was working my tail off, 60 hours a week, getting things caught up. So in the end, it balanced out. After that, then I ended up getting hired on at that sawmill equipment manufacturer. So yeah. How did it change? I realized that freelance is very versatile, and if you've got no work coming in, that's it. It ends, right? You've got no backup support or anything like that. And then I also realized that my direction in career, financially, I needed to make a shift. I couldn't depend on just freelance income.
Hmm. Oh, that's always a helpful, whether you can or you can't, that's a helpful decision to know going forward. Marie, how was your career affected?
I think she's
Uh,
frozen.
I think, yeah, we will get back to Marie. Erin, why don't you tell me about your experience with the pandemic?
Yeah, so I was actually laid off during the pandemic, and it kind of forced another career change for me. That was the intense job that I had, where I kept trying to make it work. At the time, my son was 4 when the pandemic started, and I was still in my job where I was traveling 60% to Asia. And
Mm,
I mean, if that tells you any timeline, it doesn't just happen right away. It's not like my son was born. It's like, oh, I'm going to change. I
yeah.
kept trying to make my old life work, and I kept trying to put it into a box and make it fit. And it was nice, like, square peg, round hole. It did not work. And I didn't want to admit that it wasn't working. And so the pandemic, I got laid off, and it definitely hurt because it felt like it wasn't quite my decision to leave the company, but it really was the best. It gave me the courage to shift and do what I'm doing now to get to where it's so much better. I would never go back to the old company. It does not fit with what I'm doing right now. Um, but it took the pandemic to, I guess, get me there. And I still to this day think about it. I was like, would I have ever actually left on my own? Or how many more years would I have kept trying to shove that square peg into that round hole? How much longer would I have done that? So to me, it worked out. I didn't see it at the time. It took a little bit of reflection to get there, but at the time it got me to a much better position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Marie, welcome back.
Yeah, sorry
What
about that. My battery died. It's my computer.
that's fine. The have mobile technology will travel. Tell me
Yep.
about the pandemic and your career experience, whether it did or didn't have an effect on it, and if so, what?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually moved to Ohio and we bought a house in 2019, but I didn't move until May of 2020. So I was planning on working remotely. And then once the pandemic hit, kind of everyone was working remotely. So I think it actually helped my transition into moving outside of the office environment into more of a remote world, because we had been doing it for so long. So by the time I moved and people were starting to go back in the office, let's say 6 months later, um, it was a little less faux pas to work via Teams and remote and have meetings like we're doing right now. And so I feel like it actually, helped, um, be able to set my work it up for success while, moving outside of the office environment.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's it. That's what I'm hearing actually, just in general conversation with folks is the flexibility and uh, it- just more options in terms of careers and jobs and how you do them. I want to sort of bring us to where we are now in your careers, the culmination of all of this, and I'm going to ask sort of an esoteric question and ask just what is, if people don't buy what you sell, they buy why you sell it. What is your why now in your career path? I mean, work is not just work, and work is meaningful. And how does that figure into your life now? Why are you getting up every day, Marie? Why why are you getting up in the morning and driving so you could you can do your job, but you also can coach your daughter's soccer team? What is the why now, and maybe how is it different from what it was when you first started out? And Marie, you're up on my screen, so I'm going to go to you first.
Wonderful. So from my standpoint, my mom owned her own business while I was a kid. And
Mm,
so seeing that success, I wanted to give that to my children as well. So kind of that's really the why behind what it is for me now. What it was before was I really just wanted to be in charge, like for myself. Where now it's shifted into more, I want to be a role model for my children, as my mom was for me.
good to know. Aaron, what about you?
So my why started off as, I'm the first person in my family to go to college, and my mom's a single mom, um, and so my why started off as, I'm going to prove to my family like I can do this. They were pretty supportive, but being the first and the only one, it
Hmm.
was like I want to show everybody that their faith in me wasn't misplaced. Like I can do this. So it was like very like I can't fail because then I'm just they like put so much effort into me. So like it was that kind of fueled me, and that was my why, was just like I need to do better and bigger and everything so that I'm showing them. Now that it's it's been a good 10, 15 years, I feel like my why has shifted, to having seen all of the discrimination that goes into being a woman in a male dominated field. I've shifted to helping others not face what I've gone through. I feel like I've been discriminated a lot in my career. I won't get into it here, but it. I don't want my son to, one, I don't want him to exhibit those. I don't want him to have that. I want him to just be an advocate. But two, everybody that I work with that I met, I just want my workplace to be more, not just like efficient, but a more welcoming place for everybody, where different opinions are valued instead of being shoved into a corner. Because I think that, engineering is a team sport. And I just feel like, you get better designs and better solutions with the more personalities that you have and embrace. So I think that's kind of been my why now, is just being an advocate and helping to get more diverse opinions in there.
Hmm. Modeling is often the best way to contribute. Nikki, what about you?
My why has definitely shifted, and it kind of sounds selfish, but I'm doing it for myself. Um, so I've taken care of family my whole entire life. I've done everything for everybody else. And now I'm at that stage where I can grow and develop myself as a person and in my career. I am focusing on doing as much as I can. And I'm doing it to show my daughters that anything's possible, that they should just reach for the skies and go for it and not be afraid.
Hmm. So, I just want to sort of wrap this up as we get to the close of the hour in terms of what, I guess, maybe one piece of advice would you go back to your 20 or 21-year-old self? What would you tell her about, I don't know, work, life, career paths, etc.? What piece of advice would you give yourself that you may or may not have gotten from somebody else, and you may or may not have listened to it? Nikki, you're up on
Have,
my screen, so.
yeah, have those hard conversations. Don't be afraid of them. And make sure that the people around you are supportive and cheer you on and support all the decisions you make going forward.
Cool. Marie, what about your younger self?
Yeah, knowing what I know now, I would certainly tell myself not to overlook opportunities because you don't think they're the right path forward. It's okay to take risks and go down a path that you may not have preconceived prior to, a door being open.
Yeah, definitely. No one decision is the last decision you'll ever get to make in your life. Aaron, what about you?
Don't try to put yourself in a box, whether it's a box of your own making or a box that somebody else put you in. It's okay to go beyond the box. Don't try to get shoved into something that somebody else or yourself is trying to put you in. It's okay to expand and grow.
Uh-huh. All right. Thank you very much to all of you for your time today and your great stories, your great advice. Perspectives is so important. And I want to thank everybody on the webinar today for tuning in. And we hope that you will come back for a future FPSA webinar. As always, you can check on the webinars on the event calendar on the website at fpsa.org for all upcoming webinars and events. And next week, there's going to be a webinar on Introduction to Clean in Place Systems, what they are and why you should have one. So that's a very important topic that we're going to be touching on then. Thank you to everybody for sharing so openly. We really appreciate the honesty and the perspective. And thank you to everybody who joined and who sent in questions and comments. We really appreciate it. It takes the proverbial village. So thank you all, and have a great rest of your Earth Day.
Thanks.